On Monday, January 30th, 22-year-old Nikki Secondino was sent back to Rikers Island, where she has been held since December 29 on charges of second-degree murder, after stabbing and bludgeoning her father, 61-year-old Carlos Secondino, resulting in his death. She is also being charged with second-degree attempted murder for stabbing her sister, critically wounding her. First-degree assault and a weapons charge have been added. Here's where the story begins. Nikki was an aspiring transgender model, putting much of her focus on Instagram photos. But her home life was less than dazzling. In July of 2022, Nikki called police, claiming her father tried to kill her. 2 days later, her sister, Liana, was charged with assault and criminal mischief, allegedly tearing down window blinds and cutting Nikki's hand. In late July, Nikki filed for a restraining order, claiming Liana threatened to kill her, and that her father was in the mob. A judge agreed to sign off on that order. A police source says that tension was high in the household, saying she was just getting annoyed at minor things, and it kept building up in her mind until she went into a fit of rage. At Christmas time, Liana was visiting at her father Carlos' home in Brooklyn on break from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. She intended to visit her boyfriend before returning to Pennsylvania. But on December 29th, she heard noises coming from the living room. When she went to check it out, she found Nikki stabbing her father on the couch. Nikki then turned on Liana, stabbing her about her face, hands, and body. She needed surgery, but survived the ordeal. Neighbors claimed they heard screams and the sounds of bodies slamming against the walls. They also claimed they heard Carlos shouting for someone to call 911. Nikki was heard banging on doors, telling the residents that 2 strangers had broken in at her family's apartment, demanding money. One resident opened her door to see blood in the hallway, and closed the door, terrified. When police arrived, Nikki retold her story of 2 men in ski masks demanding money. She added that they sexually assaulted her. Nikki had slash marks on her hands, but her story quickly fell apart. Her sister immediately told officials that Nikki had stabbed her, and asked them to check on her father. She eventually confessed in detail. "I came out of the bedroom. My father was sitting on the couch. I hit him with a hammer, then reached for my favorite German knife and stabbed the shit out of him. My sister came out and tried to stop me, and I stabbed her in the back, head and stomach. I wanted them dead. If I would have seen the 911 caller, she would have been next. I didn't plan it. I didn't have to. I don't remember where I put the knife. I am sure they will find it." Secondino was arraigned on Monday. She is due back in court in April.
76-year-old Nyrle Miller has twice been accused of trying to kill her husbands with poison. In 1986, her first husband, Ronald Rovenalt, became severely ill and was diagnosed with acute arsenic poisoning. He suffered long-term damage to his limbs, internal organs, and nervous system. She claimed he got it from being careless with weed killer. She was acquitted of attempted homicide in 1988. Miller had filed for divorce 1 month before her arrest in 1986. On October 12, 1986, Miller's 2-year-old grandson, Corey Etkin, disappeared from his home in New Columbia. He had lived with his mother, Debbie Wise, and his 5-year-old sister Nina, as well as his mother's roommate Alberta Sones, along with her 2 young children. On the night of October 12th, Debbie ran to a gas station in Milton to put gas in her car while the kids were asleep, and Alberta stayed home with them. The gas station was closed, so it took her longer than normal, but she was gone less than half an hour. When she returned home, the front door was open, but Alberta was still watching TV in the living room. Debbie went to check on Corey, but he was gone from his bed. Alberta said she heard and saw nothing. Police thought he may have followed his mother out of the house when she left, so they launched an intense search, to no avail. Police conducted lie detector tests on Alberta and some friends of Debbie's. Everyone passed. Debbie's story was confirmed after reviewing surveillance at the gas stations. His father was in prison. Debbie told police that in the days leading up to the disappearance, she had been receiving strange phone calls. Many times they just hung up, but sometimes she could hear them breathing. After his disappearance, several ransom calls were made to different members of his family. Around June of 1987, a caller told Debbie they were going to sell Corey for $25,000 if she didn't comply. Police also received a call around that time. His grandmother claims she received a call as late as 1991. All calls stopped when police put tracking equipment on Debbie's phone. In March 1987, several phone calls were placed to the Daily Item offices in Milton and Danville. They believed one call was from a woman, saying Corey is alive. Tell Jim we will get Corey back. In another call the next week, the caller said Corey would be killed in 7 days. The voice was much lower and they spoke slowly. Later that same day, another call from a woman came, saying Debbie is going to lose 2 people close to her. Not surprisingly, those calls were all traced back to Miller's phone. However, she had a phone outside of her home, which meant someone else could have made the phone calls, in theory. She was not charged with anything. In June of 2020, Pennsylvania State Police reported that significant advances had been made in the case, based on cooperation from individuals and advances in forensic technology. They stated they believed the person responsible would soon be brought to justice. In 2021, a state grand jury began an investigation in Corey's disappearance. Corey's father James confirmed that he was called as a witness for it. He has said that he believes Nyrle Miller knows something. In July 2022, Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers announced a $20,000 reward for information on Corey's case. It was also revealed in that announcement that police believe a relative is responsible. Throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, Miller has been arrested multiple times for thefts and writing bad checks. A grand jury report noted that Miller had 10 summary convictions for bad checks between 77 and 88. Miller was sentenced in 1992 to serve 14.5 to 54 months in Muncie Prison for women for her involvement in a burglary ring in Northumberland County. That included a probation revocation for a previous charge of stealing 2 rifles from an elderly couple she cared for. She was incarcerated when she and her second husband, Jack Plotz, were charged with stealing $30,000 from the Milton Eagles Club, of which her husband was the club secretary. In 2002, after both were released, they moved to a home in Millmont. It happened to be next door to her future husband, John Nichols, where he lived with his then-girlfriend, Joan Madden. Over the years, they all became friends. In December of 2011, Plotz lost his battle with cancer. That same month, Joan Madden died unexpectedly. On January 1, 2012, Miller's home went into default on its mortgage, and Miller moved in with Nichols. He was her third husband. Investigators claimed that Miller immediately began to defraud Nichols, draining over $80,000 from his bank accounts, fraudulently obtaining sole beneficiary status on several life insurance policies, and opening loans against those policies without Nichols' approval. The Area Agency on Aging got involved, and Miller repeatedly asked them to stop looking into Nichols' finances. On April 11, Nichols called himself, asking them to stop. But officials say they could hear Miller in the background, telling him what to say. On April 14, 2018, Miller says Nichols got up to go to the bathroom late at night, urinated on the floor, went back to bed, and awoke the next morning saying he couldn't breathe. He would later die, and it would be found that he had an acute amount of verapamil in his system. Miller was prescribed verapamil. Nichols had chronic heart disease, and the verapamil was determined to have killed him. Miller had picked up 2 separate prescriptions of verapamil in April. Sometime after Nichols' death, Miller remarried for her 4th time. She is currently incarcerated in Northumberland County Prison. Jury selection is complete. Trial is set for April 18th through April 28th in Lehigh County.